The final playoff push is upon us. It's Week 12 of the NFL season, and we're underway on EA Sports. This one fielded at the 5. Here come the Bengals now to take over. And a look here at their go-to guy under center. They'll run it now out of the gun. He takes this from the 30 to the 34. And this O-line, it is the lifeblood of the offense.
They establish the tone. Mean, nasty, physical. They can't wait to get after people. That allows the rest of the offense to feel confident.
Second down to the offense in search of 6 yards. Off the play fake, he'll look to throw. And the catch made, it's Tyler Boyd. And they do finally get him, but he takes it to the 25. A big play there for the Bengals. 41 yards. And on this first drive, looks like they want to get that vertical passing game going early.
And they did, and what a warning shot they just fired. If you're not going to back up and play coverage deep, we're going to attack you all game long. And once you adjust to that and you start to back off, then that opens things up underneath. A really nice start for them. Great way to get the game going.
Back to throw now on first down. And he slings one that's incomplete. John Ross, the one he was looking for. That'll bring up second down. Partner, your thoughts on this D-line?
I love a unit that can control the run and get after the passer. This is an all-around terrific defensive front. Hard to move the ball against them on the ground, and then when you want to throw it, look out. Here they come after the quarterback.
They'll run it now out of the gun. And he'll lose yardage here, going down back at the 28. They'll wind up losing 3. And now it's third down.
The insistence of speed at every position is really seen at the defensive end spot. These guys in the old days were often outside linebackers. They just pushed them forward because they wanted them to play fast and get to the quarterback or the running backs quicker than ever before.
They do get 12, but they'll be marked short. And that leads to a fourth down.
Well, it looks like they got what they wanted. They got the completion, but they weren't able to break any tackles or gain nearly enough yardage to pick up the first down. Now to be fourth and short.
So it's our visitors who make the first dent in the scoreboard as they get 3 here on the initial drive of the ball game.
Yeah, it's hard to say who actually won that opening drive. On the one hand, anytime you can come in as a road team and get an early lead, you're going to be thrilled. But at the same time, to have the ball as deep in enemy territory as they did and come away with only 3, that's got to be a little bit of a disappointment.
And a good effort on the return there gets them across the 30 to the 33-yard line. So out come the Steelers now for their first drive. They're led out by their 6'4" quarterback, the former Oklahoma Sooner, Landry Jones.
And no excitement unless you're on the defensive team of last week in his numbers, because the only excitement he really generated was the 1 interception he threw.
Yeah, no touchdown passes.
Yeah, and his team wasn't real thrilled about that. And they lost the game. So I know this week has been tough on him because he's been working hard. Fundamentals, footwork, finding the right targets. And bottom line, how do they get a win?
And let's take a look at the Steeler offense.
When it comes to Le'Veon Bell, it's not about the numbers. It's about his style. And when we watch him run the football and almost stop time behind the line of scrimmage before he finds the hole he wants to run through, it's a style that's his and unique to him. I'm not sure everyone else can emulate it.
Jones now off the play fake. Looking middle, and it's incomplete. Juju Smith-Schuster, the intended receiver that time. And it's third down. And this defensive line will be looking to control the point of attack.
And that's what they've done throughout this season. This is a terrific unit. They play together very, very well, and they don't permit big plays to happen.
10 yards to go on third. Jones from the gun, he'll throw. And he'll be taken down by the Bengal pressure. So a first quarter sack, and remember, keep in mind, he had 2 sacks in last week's game.
And it's always intriguing to me to watch these great pass rushers because some of them, they need their teammates to scheme for them, maybe occupy people and make it a one-on-one matchup. Other guys, they just defeat everything in front of them. To get 2 sacks in a game, it's a little bit of both for you.
On fourth down, here comes the Steeler punter Jordan Berry to kick it away. Pulled in at the 24. 12 yards on the return that time. Cincinnati now ready to take the field. And they're not going to play this conservative, I don't think. They had the field goal last time, and they're up, but they're looking to put a drive in the end zone.
Oh, I agree with you totally. No one goes out on the field and says, all right, let's just settle for 3, except in certain situations, trying to ice a game, that sort of deal. Most of the time, it's end zone, and that's what you're thinking, and I believe that's exactly what they're thinking as they begin this one.
Yeah, no quarterback ever goes out there saying, hey, let's get 3, right?
Not one that I've ever met. It's vitally important to wrap him up immediately because if you let that big guy get ahead of steam up, boy, then you've got real trouble trying to get him down.
But they're able to hold him to a short gain on first down. Looking to throw. Wide open receiver complete. And he's taken down, but not before he gets this into enemy territory across the 40. A really nice gain of 25 yards.
But when you hit him on the move like that, and he's able to get into open field with a full head of steam, oh, boy, it's going to be tough to get him down.
Yeah, there was a big window. They're lucky they did get him down. First down and 10 now for the offensive group. A handoff as they run the counter play. And able to push his way forward here for a good little gain. It's a pickup of 4, and it'll bring up second down.
Well, they didn't get a whole lot out of that one, but I think you got to continue to try and run and try and keep the defense honest.
You mean or else they'll just sit back, dare you to throw it on every down?
Yeah, you get your quarterback hit a lot that way, too.
Now a handoff working right. And they'll be inside the 25 now at the 24. It's a 7-yard gain there, and it's good enough to move the chains.
At this stage of the game, the run-pass numbers are a little bit out of whack because most of their yardage has come through the air. But in a sense, that just sets things up for big runs like that because the defense might be a little bit off balance. They pick up another first down with that run.
So here we go, 1st and 10 now. A handoff as they run the counter play. That's going to go as a loss of 4, and it'll be second down.
And when you're trying to set up a counter play, it's what a lot of people call an influence play. You're really hoping those defensive linemen are really agile that day. If they stayed out late the night before the game and they're not moving as fast, it's a lousy call because that means they're just going to sit in the hole that you hope to create just by the movement of your offensive line.
And there they got the ball to the outer third of the field, but tackled behind the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, things get stacked up in there if they don't move as well as you want them to, and probably just trying to escape and couldn't get away.
On third down, he'll drop to throw. Letting one go deep for the end zone. That's incomplete, but there is a flag down, so hang on. A big call coming on third down. So they decline it as that will bring up 4th.
And I know that yardage and field position are keys to any game played, but you've got to consider downs when you're talking about penalties, and they wisely did not take that one and made it 4th down.
Oh, they get to the football. It's blocked. It's picked up, accelerating, and off he goes. The 30, the 20, 10. And he's in for 6 and a Steeler touchdown. Boswell now for the extra point. And this is up and good to make it 7-3. Set now to kick this one away, and off it goes. This will be fielded at the 8. And a good effort on the return there. Gets him across the 30 to the 33-yard line. The Bengal offense now gets set to head back out onto the field. Down, they'll run it on the draw play. Try to find a lane, but instead he'll get back to the line of scrimmage, and no more. No gain on the play. It'll be second down. And if you're the defense and those D tackles, you like that they're trying to run the football here against your 4-3, don't you? Yeah, because they tend to eat things up because they are so strong and physical, and especially when they play with leverage, where they get lower than the offensive lineman and control them. And what I love about the good defensive tackles, they can play over the guards, they can slide and play over the center. Nobody in the offense likes that day when they have to deal with those guys. And a flag comes in as that one falls incomplete. Well, let's see who this is on. So he was past the line of scrimmage when he threw it. And as they say, that's a no-no. Got to be able to understand where you are on the field and not cross the line before throwing the ball downfield. Now on 3rd and long, they'll look to throw. Nowhere to escape, and he goes down. A few issues here on the offensive line. Apparently, he got sacked 5 times last week. They got to him here in the first quarter. And I would think that running the ball would be paramount here because it's a different team they're facing, but they watch the film as well. So they'll take many of those same principles and try and apply them in this game to see if they fixed what was wrong with them in the last game. So on 4th down, on comes the left-footed punter, Kevin Huber, to punt it away. Back deep, Jalen Marshall. Fair catch called for and made at about the 32-yard line. So a change of possession here on the punt. And the Steelers will go on offense here, 1st and 10. Pittsburgh's offense now heading back out onto the field. And a 3-and-out on that first drive. We'll see if they can do better here. They should have a better opportunity because the nerves should be settled now. That first series, everybody goes out with a little extra emotion. So now they get a chance to go back out and say, okay, now we're into the game. Let's go play and play as best we can. You almost get a mulligan then on that first drive? Sometimes it absolutely serves that way. You get a second opportunity. Nothing big happened. But then again, you didn't commit any mistakes either. Off you go. And on 2nd and 10 now. Here's Jones, throwing again, and that's incomplete. Well, we keep stats on everything, don't we? This is one that you don't want to have. That's his second drop right here in the first quarter. Yeah, I was going to say, only in the first quarter. Certainly a shift that he wants to right quickly. Now Jones. The Bengal pressure gets him that time. Down he goes. defensive end gets in there that time. They were in a 4-3. What's the responsibility of the ends versus the tackles there, Charles?
Well, most of the time when you talk about the ends, they're your pass rushers. They're the guys that you turn loose to try and get to the guy who's going to throw the football. The tackles, usually more of the run-stuffing variety. But the way this game is advanced, you're wanting a little bit of everything out of all of your guys. But let's just go ahead and break it down and make it simple. The guy who's the right defensive end versus a right-handed quarterback, that's the blind side. He's going after the quarterback. He's going to put him on the ground.
A good return there, 17 yards. And possession will switch hands, 1st and 10. The Bengals offense now, they head back onto the field. And, Charles, if the season ended today, and it's not going to, we still have December left.
More football.
We're only in November. But they would be a wild card team. And that's great. They'd be in the playoffs, but you know they're trying to bump up to be one of those division leaders.
That guarantees you at least one home game in the playoffs, and that's what you're really seeking. But there also isn't much margin for error for this team, right? Because right where they're sitting, a 2-game losing streak could have them out of the playoffs, so they've got to make sure they continue to keep the momentum going.
Absolutely. There's some sharks smelling blood in the water behind them. Now he'll look to throw here on 2nd and 10. And some space here. And taking it across midfield and inside the 45. That one good for 15, and the Bengals get a 1st down. Now the offense lining up 1st and 10. And before they can run another play, the clock hits 000. And time is up on the 1st quarter. 7-3 the score. EA Sports NFL Sunday returns following this. Alongside Charles Davis, Brandon Gaudin, and it's the Bengals with a football to begin quarter number 2. And they've got it here with a 1st down. They'll run it now out of the gun. And he's going to be stopped at about the 37. A good run there on 1st down, and it'll leave them with a 2nd and 2. And that looked like some pretty easy yardage there right up the gut.
And he's a guy that has some height to him. So when you don't have to drop a shoulder or create or get through contact or trash, makes it a lot easier to stay upright, see the field, and make a run as we just saw there.
And to give this time to the tailback. And now running right through it. And he's going to get this inside the 30. It's a Bengal 1st down, a pickup of 11.
Well, so much for him being bottled up throughout the day. Finally finds a way to break through and get a really nice gain. The defense had felt great about what they had going. Now they've got to turn their attention to getting it back in that direction. Can they bottle him up again? Because I'd say after that run, confidence is pretty high for him.
And he'll give it here to his running back. And not much to speak of there. Maybe a yard down to the 20. Now the Bengals on 3rd down. 0 for 3 to this point. They could use a conversion. This is 3rd and 4. They'll drop the throw. And he'll be brought down, but a tip of the cap on the spin move as that gives him a 1st down. They're able to convert on 3rd down, and that sets up a 1st and goal. They run the counter now on 1st down. No dice this go-around. He's hit behind the line and taken down. That's going to go as a loss of 2, and it'll be 2nd down. They tried to run the counter, just that the defense wasn't fooled.
And when they're not fooled, you see the end result. Because what you're doing there, you mentioned the counter. You're using your offensive linemen sometimes to pull or move, to influence the defensive front, to go in that direction and create the space back in the other side and block it appropriately. But you're exactly right. Didn't move him. Sat there waiting for him and made the play.
Here we go. 3, 19.
He'll set up to throw. This will be caught at about the 6. No gain on the play, and it'll bring up a 3rd down. Well, he caught it right at the line of scrimmage, and before he could even think about advancing it forward, he got hit.
Great tackling, because that's what you're taught. Don't give up yards after the catch, and most offenses make a living off of yards after catch. Those hidden yards that may not go into the score sheet, but they count big for moving the ball and stretching the field. Really nice open field tackle.
Here's Randy Bullock now as he'll go for the field goal. And remember, he had one blocked earlier. And Bullock will put this one through, and they'll get it back within a point at 7-6. So this time the protection holds up for him just fine, and he's able to bang it through.
I think their special teams coach got the point across. He gave him a pretty good earful after the block earlier, and this time there's no penetration, so they're able to pick up 3.
The kickoff team on the field now as they will send this one away. On the return, it's Jalen Marshall. And he'll take it past the 25 and up to the 28-yard line. And Pittsburgh getting set to take the field.
And this is their 3rd drive. Right now, maybe not about points, just about getting something. They haven't gotten a first down yet in this game.
It's a mental barrier you don't think about until you go a couple of drives without getting a first down. Then all of a sudden it looms big. It gets harder and harder to actually attain that first down.
And he's not even going to get back to the line of scrimmage. It's a loss of a yard there, and now 2nd down.
Well, you had to punt on your first drive, and on the first play of the 2nd drive, you end up going backwards. I would dare say they need something good to happen right here, right now.
Now a handoff here to his running back. And he'll be brought down shy of the 40 at the 38-yard line. It'll be a gain of 11, and that's going to make it 3rd down and less than a yard.
Look, the first down marker is out there, but sometimes it's hard to find for an offense when they're in a long yardage situation, which usually means throw the football. In this case, they went against the tendency and ran it, and boy, the reward was there. A big, big pickup, and guess what? It's now 3rd and very short in order to try and pick up a first down. And they really needed to get something going, didn't they? They had punted on the last 2 possessions. The running game starting to come to the front for them, providing a nice pickup there to keep this drive going.
Now a play fake here on 1st down. Rush coming, and he's taken down.
And plays like that really hurt play calling. They had a really nice gain on the previous play, but gave about half the yardage back on the sack. Excellent pressure up front. Nowhere to go with the football. Down he goes.
They'll run it now out of the gun. And he's going to fight his way forward here for a modest gain. Give him 6 on the run. They're going to be faced now with a 3rd and 12.
Frustrating for a defense, energizing for an offense. Finding a way to create that type of yardage in your running game, that'll make the guys carrying the ball very, very happy.
On 3rd down, Jones. It's a short one here, complete to his tight end. 2 yards is all they'll get on the completion. It's 4th down.
Got to give credit where it's due. Really nice defense on that play. The pitch and catch was successful, but not any run after it.
He's been a busy man here in this first half as he gets it away. And this will carry out of bounds. Where are they going to spot it now? At about the 18-yard line, it looks like. Now the Cincinnati offense ready to see what they can do here. And they had 3 points last time, but they didn't want 3 points because they were well within range of scoring a touchdown. We'll see if they can do better now.
I'm with you on that one. Let's just go ahead and be frank about the whole thing. The only one happy about the 3-point
kicker.
Exactly. You put it through the post. That's going to help him in contract time. But that offense, you're thinking, let's get in the end zone this time.
I don't know if that helped him at contract time. You could have kicked that one through.
I don't know about that.
Toe bash.
I don't know about that. Super toe.
Second down following the incompletion. Now they'll run it on the toss. And he is met at the line of scrimmage, and he goes down right there. Call it no gain on the run there, and now they'll be looking at a third down. Tried to get the edge there. The defense just too quick to the ball.
That's what we call total team defense there. Can't get to the edge, no place to move it inside, and then allows everyone else to run to the ball and create a big-time tackle for no gain for the offense.
And he fires one, but incomplete. Here's Kevin Huber now, as he'll kick it away for the second time. .46 on his first kick, this one in that neighborhood as well. And it's fielded at the 34. A nice job on the return there, 16 yards. Comes the Steeler offense now, ready to see what they can do here.
The results for them so far not that great. Well, not good at all. 3 drives, 3 punts.
Yeah, and now what you're doing is you're looking at your play sheet. You're trying to figure out what you're going against defensively. I wonder, are they showing them something they haven't seen or anticipated in practice, and maybe that's throwing them off? Or do they just have to go to a different play calling section and try and run some offense that way?
And he's going to get this one down to the 45. A reminder that coming up in 2 minutes, we'll check in with Larry Ridley in Orlando with highlights and analysis of this first half of play.
And I'm going to check in with a heater.
I'm going to be right there with you, partner.
All right, here we go. Green 39. Green 39.
Now Jones looking to throw on second down. Toward the center of the field, but it's incomplete. Trying to get it there to Martavis Bryant. And it's third down.
One thing I have learned, receivers don't mind high throws so much to the sideline, but do that over the middle to them, and not only are the DBs going to throw a little verbal trash their way, when they get back to the huddle, they're going to have a few words to say to their QB, aren't they?
Yeah, hung out to dry a little bit there on the high throw. Luckily fell incomplete. The Steelers picking up 15 yards there at a first down.
It's a nice job hitting him on the angle route there, coming out of the backfield, cutting sharply across the middle. And that's good timing between the quarterback and his receiver.
Effective third down play to move the chains.
Hurry up, here we go. 319.
Throwing on first down. Jones. And incomplete.
Well, partner, so much for the mismatch. How about the guy at the second level, that big linebacker, able to run with the receiver and make a play on the football?
Second down here after the incomplete pass.
Watch tight, watch tight. Tight end right. Hurry up, here we go.
Jones now. Gonna throw again. Oh, the rookie nearly had the pick. Probably should have had it. Third down now.
Feels like they're getting caught in between here because they had incompletions on first and second down. Now you got to worry a little bit about the clock because you prefer not to give them another shot here in the first half. But if you don't pick up the first down, guess what? You're likely going to have to.
Jones on third down. And now another one thrown incomplete. The 3 straight incompletions, they don't care. That hasn't dissuaded them. They're going to go for it on 4th.
Let's go. Green 39.
Here's Jones operating from the gun. And they will not be able to hook up there. It's incomplete. Boy, it looked like he had it and dropped it. And the Bengals will get the football back. Well, they were looking for a clutch play there on 4th, unable to come up with it.
How about that defense, though, huh? How about that D?
Yeah, momentum swing.
And, you know, I remember playing how much 4th downs were emphasized. You know, because, as you said, it's a momentum play. It's also a big test for you. You know, if people are going to go for it on 4th down, they believe you're not up to the challenge. You want to show them differently.
And on the outside, they're playing press coverage.
They'll come out throwing here to start the drive. And that is caught on the right sideline, but out of bounds, says the line judge. The throw took him a little too far. It's 2nd down.
Out routes are always timing routes. And if the timing's off just a little bit, it can really throw off a play. It looked like he let him a little too much there.
Yeah, there was a fraction of a second because he caught it, just couldn't stay in bounds. They'll run it now out of the gun. And nothing doing. He's immediately taken down at the line of scrimmage. No gain on that one as it brings up a 3rd and 10. He'll drop to throw. And he's got his man on the out route. Now the Bengals going to use the first of their timeouts as the clock will stop with 55 seconds to go until halftime. On 1st down, he'll drop to throw. Underneath here to Hill. And out of bounds on the other side of midfield at the 45. Another nice gain, 13 yards that time, and another 1st down. Now on 1st down, he'll drop to throw it. And no escaping this time as he'll go down. They got him for a sack. The Bengals going to use the 2nd of their timeouts as the clock will stop with 45 seconds to go in the 1st half. Now back to throw. And he slides to avoid the hit. Give him 9 on the play, and that'll lead here to a 3rd down. Would be a long field goal try from here as they try to hustle to the line. And no escaping this time as he'll go down. They got him for a sack.
I'm starting to feel for that quarterback back there. I mean, you know me. Normally, don't have a lot of empathy for the QB, right? In this case, definitely. He's been on constant duress this entire game. I don't know how he's surviving back there.
And to think, there's still a long way to go in this football game. Here's Kevin Huber now as he's on to punt for Cincinnati. So we reach halftime here in the Steel City with the Steelers on top. As we'll send you down to Orlando as we check in with Larry Ridley and our EA Sports Halftime Report. Larry?
Okay, Brandon, thanks, and welcome everyone to our EA Sports Halftime Report. Let's get to the highlights. Both the Steelers and the Bengals have not had the best success throwing the football. It's a passing league, but these defenses have mostly been able to contain that today. So let's take a look at some of the highlights from the 1st half. Early in quarter 1, Jerry's going to get to the quarterback here. This ends up as a loss of 7. Moving to late in the 1st quarter, defense will get to the QB here. This ends up as a loss of 9. Midway through the 2nd quarter, Jerry's going to push his way to the QB here. This will go for a loss of 8. We're set up for a great 2nd half. So let's get you out to it. Here's Brandon Guyton.
It's a short kick, taking it to 15. The Steeler offense now with the football first here to begin the third quarter. They have the lead. Now they'll be looking to extend that lead.
And this is where I enjoy talking about one of my favorite subjects, tendency breakers, or counters as I also like to call them. You've done things in a certain way in the first half, and they've had ability to see what you've done. They're going to make their adjustments. So guess what? You adjust yourself and try and stay ahead of the pace because you are looking for some separation in this ball game.
The adjustment to the adjustment.
Without a doubt. Show them one thing, hit them with something else.
It'll be a gain of 10 to start the drive out by a few inches. That'll be a first down.
Well, that's the desired outcome coming out here in the second half of being able to run the football and establish a little bit of pace and maybe even a bit of dominance at the line of scrimmage. And they want that to continue. Way too early to think about this being ball control time. But the way they're running it, you got to think they may want to continue that and see if they can go ahead and grind their opponents into submission.
And a new set of downs here after picking up the first on the ground. Going to give this time to the tailback. And he'll be knocked down sideways, right near midfield. Just a yard on the pickup there, and it'll bring up a 2nd and 9.
When the 4-3 defense is functioning really well, you know who stays what we call clean and no one gets to him? The guy playing the middle linebacker position, the guy we call Mike. That means the defensive front is eating up all the blocks and just let him go to the football and make a play.
And he'll be brought down at the 45-yard line. 6 yards is the pickup, and that'll lead to a 3rd down. Boy, the evolution of the game and how these guys on plays like that can get out of the pocket, keep plays alive, it just makes things so much harder for defenses.
It really does, and we're talking about an era in the game where the quarterbacks are the most athletically gifted that we've seen in a bunch. I mean, when you talk about collectively, it's unbelievable. So their ability to move is practiced now. It's not necessarily, oh, he just took off and you guys figure it out. When he takes off, everyone knows where to go now. They know how to run routes, change things, make themselves presentable for the quarterback. It's a lot of time that they put in on it. It's not just your static 1, 2, 3. This is where the ball goes anymore.
And able to push his way forward here for a good little gain. 5 yards is the tally on first down. That brings up 2nd and 5.
And there's a run to be happy with. Good, solid yardage. You'll take that anytime you hand the ball to a back.
Back to the ground, this time with Bell. And a big hit at the end of that one. He's knocked down hard, right there around the 35-yard line. A little educational piece. I know a lot of people here, 3-4, 4-3, etc. Take us through the 4-3, Charles.
Okay, 4-3. 4 down defensive linemen, usually 2 defensive tackles, 2 defensive ends. Behind them, the 3 those are the linebackers. The middle linebacker, often known as the...
And now a fumble. The ball's out, and the Bengals grab it. And he's able to take this one back to the 36-yard line. Often on fumbles, you look at the guy who coughed it up and say, geez, what did he do? But, hey, let's tip the cap to the defense here.
Not a problem at all, my man. I'm not even going to tip it. I'm going to doff my cap to him. Congratulations. Big-time play. Knocking it free and creating something good for your team.
So here are the Bengals now as they get their first possession of this second half. We have not seen much on offense here from either side these last few drives. We've hit a wall, so to speak.
And have hit it hard, haven't we? Because the defenses right now, they seem to be a step ahead, don't they? Beating them to the point of attack, beating them to the punch. These offensive guys, they're tinkering like crazy. What's it going to take to get back on track?
Yeah, both sides searching for adjustments. 5 yards on the carry. Good pickup on first down.
And that's exactly what you want on a first down run. Pick up 5 yards, bring up 2nd and 5. The defensive line, though, they've got to figure out a way to out-leverage the guys up front because the offensive line is winning at the point of attack.
They'll set up a throw. And a big loss here as he's taken down. A Tough couple of weeks for the man under center. 5 sacks last week, 4 now this week. Do you try to design some quicker developing plays if you're an offensive coordinator?
I think you do that. I think you also change his launch point at times. In other words, move your pocket to the right, to the left, roll him out, bootleg him. Do some different things so they can't just rely on the fact that he's going to take 3 to 5 steps back in the pocket and line up and throw the football.
Yeah, current formula is not working right now. The Bengals on 3rd down. They've struggled to the tune of 2 for 8 so far. This will be 3rd and forever. They'll look to throw here. And incomplete on the deep ball.
We're into the second half now. This is an offense that continues to struggle to sustain a drive.
Looks like they're just totally out of sync, whether they're running the ball, passing the ball like we saw there. I don't know. The rhythm seems off.
Here's Kevin Huber now as he's on to punt for Cincinnati. Called out a punt of 38 yards officially. And Pittsburgh getting set to take the field. And last drive, obviously not what you're looking for. You've got the lead. You've got to protect the football.
So in other words, someone got lucky because they've been moving the ball really well and wearing them down. In this case, though, giving up the football doesn't make them very happy. They can't wait to get back out there and atone for it.
Yeah, try to atone for it here on this drive. Throwing Jones. And it's a short one here, complete to the tight end. And he'll be taken down, but not before he gets into enemy territory. 12 yards that time, and a Pittsburgh first.
I like how they worked the tight end on a nice little under route there. And if you're going to give him that much space, he's not going to catch the football. He's going to run away from you a little bit, and that's exactly what he just did there, picking up extra yardage.
On first down, Jones. It's a short one here, complete to his tight end. 5 yards on the catch there, brings up second down.
How about the timing on that one? Boy, they were in sync, weren't they? 3-step drop, balls out of his hands, right to the tight end. Nice completion, just like they do it in practice.
Completed pass play. Now let's see if they go back to the air or to the ground. Now Jones, off play action. And no escaping this time as he'll go down. They got him for a sack.
That's his second sack of the game, and the best defensive ends, they do their homework as much as offensive guys do. They know how to beat the offensive lineman across from them, what moves they need to do to set them up. This guy's been pretty good at it all game long.
The Steelers on third down. They've converted 3 times in 8 chances. This is 3rd and 10. From the gun, Jones. Under pressure again, and down he goes again.
The amount of sacks that they've absorbed in this game is absolutely extraordinary. Let's just face it. This offensive line, flat out, cannot handle this pass rush. It's been demonstrated time and time again.
Here's Jordan Berry now, as he'll punt it away for the 4th time today. And that'll hit at the 5 and go into the end zone for a touchback. And out now, here come the Bengals. We have not seen much on offense from either side. These last few drives, it has been a struggle, hasn't it?
Totally, and you're thinking to yourself right now, if you're on offense trying to get things figured out, okay, we self-scout every week in our game plan. How many things do we do at certain times? What are our tendencies? Time to go to some of those tendency breakers and try and create some offense.
They always have those in their back pocket, don't they?
You have to. And if you don't keep abreast of what you're doing, you lock into a rhythm and make it easy for the opposition.
Looking for tendency breakers right now.
First play of the drive, let's give credit all around. Excellent blocking, but the guy carrying the ball, he was the finisher. A really nice run.
He'll look to throw. And the Steeler pressure too much here. He's going to go down.
Brandon, I think you understand the type of afternoon this offensive line is having. It is a long one for them. Long for you to spend it with me. Long for them trying to block those guys. They've given up a whole lot of sacks, and the speed and quickness of that defensive line is eating them alive.
Bengals on third down. Not so hot. 2 for 9 to this point. This time it's 3rd and 3. And he'll give it here to his running back. And he's able to get it to the 31, and that's enough for the first. Just 4 yards on the pickup, but that's good enough to extend the drive.
But we tend to give those running backs that are slashers a lot of credit. But how about guys who are maulers? Because that's what you want in short yardage situations. And we just saw that occur right there, didn't we?
Vertical, downhill running.
Here we go.
They go play action here on first down. Nowhere to escape, and he goes down.
This has been a tough one for this offensive line. It appears almost like they've been on roller skates this entire game, the way they've been pushed around. 6 sacks given up in this one.
Now whistles and a flag, and I believe a Bengal got going a little early there.
False start, offense.
So pin that one on the rookie right tackle.
Remember those days when the right side was simply the run-blocking side? Now you're dealing with some of the better pass rushers in the league. It'll make you a little jittery.
They'll look to throw. It's a short one here, complete to the tight end. And he'll be about a full yard shy of the 20 at the 19-yard line. It'll be a pickup of only a yard, and they're going to face an uphill battle here on 3rd and long.
Here we go.
Here's a play fake as they set up to throw. Throwing the out route incomplete. That's Carter. And this one will go to the 28-yard line. They do get 10 back, but still a ways to go on 4th.
He wasn't the primary target, but I think it was almost like a check-down situation, wasn't it?
Yeah, hoping he can break some tackles, a big tight end, but he couldn't do it.
Yeah, get it to that big frame and hope he can scatter some bodies, unable to get it done.
And they're not going to get to the line to run another play, so we will switch ends as the 3rd quarter has come to a close. We'll return with more after this. This is the NFL, and it's on EA Sports. Back now in Pittsburgh, and we've got a dandy here. A 1-point game as we begin the 4th. Punting now is Huber as he sends it away. Nifty move. It'll be a 48-yard punt. 5 there on the return. And the offense will take over with a new set of downs. And the Steelers set to take the field. These guys had to punt last time. It has not been a very fruitful game offensively thus far. They haven't even made a trip to the red zone.
And I know that everyone's going crazy on that sideline because that drives you berserk to come off the field, not really move the ball well. As you said, not even get to the red zone, let alone, not even put points on the board. They've got to just take a deep breath, relax, try and figure out what is working, and call more of that. Brandon, it's all about pace and tempo now for them. They've got the advantage, so I'm going to put musical terms for you. You don't want to go prestissimo. That's too quick, too lively, right? But you also don't want to slow it down too much. You don't want to go lento. What you really want to be is moderato. Nice and even, nice and steady, get those gains, and close out the game.
I think that chicken parm from last night's gone to your head.
The Steeler first down on the pickup of 11 yards.
Well, partner, I know this type of running back. I mean, this size, this intensity usually gets better as the game goes on. I just tell you from experience, the first few quarters, oh, you're eager. You come running up there, I'm going to tackle this guy. By the fourth quarter, you're coming up and thinking about it.
And D-line wearing down fourth quarter. Yeah, that's not a guy they want to see consistently. Looking to throw. Jones. And he'll go down right around the 47 this time. 7 yards to pick up on the pitch and catch. Second down now after the pass completion.
Single receiver. Hey, you're on an island over there. Single receiver. Let's go. 319.
Jones now off the play fake. And no escaping this time as he'll go down. They got him for a sack.
This has been a tough one for this offensive line. It appears almost like they've been on roller skates this entire game, the way they've been pushed around. 6 sacks given up in this one.
The Steelers on third down. They've converted a third of their opportunities, 3 for 9. This is third down and 12.
Here we go now. 319.
Jones off play action. Oh, incomplete. Nearly the pick they needed. They would have loved one there, but at least it does get them to fourth down.
Well, he did almost everything right. Excellent coverage, breaks on the football, just unable to haul it in and take it the other way, so he dropped an interception. The key for him now, don't dwell on it, just move on to the next play.
Yeah, call it 38 yards on the punt, no return. And the Bengals will take over here first and 10. Cincinnati now ready to take the field. These guys had to punt their last possession, and that's become too familiar of a refrain. Too many of these drives just wound up going nowhere.
Well, you know how in baseball, when the pitcher gets a base hit and he's on base, they bring his jacket out to him to keep him warm? A lot of times the punter goes to the sideline, puts on sweatpants or a wrap over his leg to keep it warm. He might need a massage from the trainer right now from all the work he's getting.
They'll try and start this drive in the air. And it pops free. The collision there jarred the ball loose and brings up second down. Unable to connect on the first down pass play. Now it's second down.
Let's go. Green 39.
Back to throw here. And that is incomplete here.
And we just saw another example. These cornerbacks have played tight coverage all game long. Might start wanting to think about a few double, triple move routes to try and shake their guys.
You're right. They have had no room to breathe. And the third down pass falls incomplete. Pretty good coverage there, and both of these defenses, they've had good coverage throughout this one.
No doubt about it, and in today's NFL, where we're used to a bit more scoring, this feels almost like a well-pitched game in baseball on both sides, where the tension continues to build. Who's going to make the big play?
And he deserves a bronze leg as he gets this one away. Skirts by him at the 35. It's a return of 4 following a 42-yard punt. And out will come the offense as they take over. The Steelers offense now, they get ready to head back on the field. They've got the lead. Last time had to punt it, though. What's the key to this drive?
I think it's leverage.
Leverage.
Big guys up front You know the motivational speech on the sideline is, guys, give us an opportunity. Protect the passer, create space for our runners, and let's go ahead and get these guys. Low man wins. Let's go do it on this drive.
We'll watch that leverage on this drive. And able to get a couple as he's across the 40 to the 41.
Well, Brandon, pace comes into play now because they've got the advantage. They've got the football, but they've got to be very careful about what speed they're going to play. You know, my music teacher back in New Paltz, Mrs. Bythema Bagley, used to say, don't go prestissimo when you really want to go largo. And what she meant by that is don't go too fast when you really want to go at a nice, slow, deliberate pace.
I am speechless. I am without speech. Well, with the fumble he had earlier, we know how key keeping the football is here. That fumble earlier probably at the forefront of his mind. Just hold on to this thing.
It's also at the forefront of the mind of the guys who are trying to get the ball from him. And since they've seen him drop it on the ground before.
And he'll be taken down by the Bengal pressure.
This offensive line flat out cannot handle this pass rush. We've seen it demonstrated time and time again to the tune of 7 sacks in this game thus far.
Here's Jordan Berry now as they're forced to kick for the 6th time today. And a fair catch signaled for and taken at about the 18-yard line. A 41-yard punt there with no return. Cincinnati now ready to take the field.
Now, if you're a fan of punting, and I know that not many people are, but this game kind of turning into one for you.
Well, it's okay if it's a skills contest, right? We're really into it then, but not during the course of an actual game. This has turned into a field position game, though. Sometimes a better punter may actually determine the outcome.
And he whips that one incomplete there. Tyler Boyd, the former Pitt Panther, was the target. And now it's 2nd down.
Had an open man that time, but ended up putting a little too much heat on it, don't you think, partner?
Absolutely. Just needed a touch more air under it. Instead, he fired an absolute bullet.
Here we go now. Blue landing.
And 2nd and 10, he'll look to throw again. And that is incomplete. Defense has set themselves up nicely. 3rd and 10 now. They're going to look to throw. Throwing for his running back, and he's got him complete. And they'll bring him down here up at about the 22-yard line. A gain of 4 on the play, and that'll bring up 4th down. His first punt, 45 yards. This looks good as well. Pulled in at the 24. It'll be a 51-yard punt that time. And the Steelers will go on offense here, 1st and 10. The Steelers offense now, they get ready to head back on the field.
And right now these guys, they're shuffling a little bit, maybe doubting, because 3 straight drives have ended with them punting the football away.
Yeah, so you start pointing fingers at each other a little bit, asking a lot of questions. What are you seeing? What are you getting? Maybe trying to narrow down your playbook a little bit and maybe get simpler rather than more complex in order to try and fashion together a drive.
Here's Jones throwing to start the drive.
They always say that real estate is about location. Well, guess what? When it's a slant route, the quick ones, timing, timing, timing. Got to be able to lead your man with the football.
And the timing off right there, threw it behind him.
Watch left, watch left, watch left. Stop right there. Let's go. No. Check.
They'll run it now out of the gun. And an alley to run. Shreds him with his stiff arm. And he takes this one all the way across midfield into enemy territory down to the 40-yard line. A big chunk on the ground there, 27 yards. Some good games going on in the early window. This might be the best of the bunch. And now here's a carry heading left. Flashed the stick skills, but didn't get a ton from it. Stopped short of the 35. 3 yards on the pickup there, and it'll be second down. Offensively with the lead, you want to run the ball, keep the clock going, but you also want to still kind of be in attack mode too, right? So how do you do that and not come back on your heels?
Think about all the practices we've watched where they have that tempo period to go over things just like this, where they describe the scenario, tell you what they're looking for, and make sure that they're still attacking, yet at the same time not going so fast as to leave too much time on the clock.
The fourth quarter here, they've got the lead. They want to keep it on the ground. That's what they're doing.
Smart football. Keep the clock grinding. Keep it going. But you got to figure now, they're going to see more people stacked up at the line of scrimmage as they try and bleed it out.
And here's a big one now. Try to hold this lead. They're going to go for it here on fourth down. Now Jones from the gun, he'll throw. Pressure comes, and the Steelers take him down. The Steelers try it, but they come up empty on fourth down. And the Bengals will get the football back. Boy, you talk about not playing it safe. Why were they going for it there, Charles?
It's got to be a full evaluation of their team. Do they trust their defense in this situation? Maybe they think they've given all they can in this game and they don't have anything left. Do they not trust that the other team's quarterback is just so hot that no matter where they get the ball, they go downfield? Remember when Bill Belichick went for it in that game, right, against Indianapolis on the road, and everybody said, why'd you go for it there? I think he just thought to himself, on the other side, if they get the ball, they're going downfield anyway. He was trying to end the game right there with his own offense.
He'll come out throwing here on first down. He's going to hit his man out of the backfield, complete. And he got blown up. Losing yardage on the play back at the 44.
Well, I know it goes against the instincts of the person catching the ball because all you're ever taught is catch the football, don't drop it.
But drop it there.
Yeah, in that situation, dropping it would have been better. End up losing yardage, even though they completed the pass.
As good as a sack.
Yeah, how about that? Although they won't get the same credit for it, and it won't help them at contract time. On a second and long, it's really nice to see an offense that has enough confidence to run the football in that situation. I think that goes back to their practice.
Oh, no, he lost the football. And fortunately, he's able to get this one back, so it is a first down.
All I can say about this play is that someone's living right. I mean, he's trying to gain yardage, trying to get upfield. Ball comes free. What's that panic that we've talked about oftentimes that you feel when you lose the ball?
You can sense it.
Oh, you can sense it. And somehow he got to it and was able to recover it for his squad.
So the Bengals in possession of the football here as we get you reset. They come up on a 1st and 10, desperately needing a score here on what could be their final drive. They'll look to throw now on first down. Quick hitter here, it's complete. A good pickup there, 8 yards on the first down completion. Now the Bengals urging everybody to get back to the line of scrimmage. Back to throw. And incomplete there. A nice hit, jars the ball free and brings up third down. He'll look to throw. Well, they would have gotten a conversion if he could hold on. Instead, the drop means it'll be fourth down.
Perhaps they overthought this one a little bit. They've been running it real well on this drive, and it was 3rd and short, okay? They decided to throw the football. Incomplete. Yeah, they might have thought just a little bit too hard about that play selection.
Toward the sideline, he will have the first down. Good catch. He was able to keep the feet inbounds. Give him 6 on the play there. And that'll be good enough for a Cincinnati first. They got exactly what they wanted there. Out route, catch, get out of bounds, stop the clock.
And I have to criticize defense here because you know the situation. You want to keep them inbounds and have the clock run. So I'm sitting on the outside portion of the field and not letting them throw an out route. Throw anything inside and I'll make the tackle. An out route? That's not the way you're supposed to play it.
And he'll be taken down just shy of the red zone at the 21. Now the defense going to use the first of their timeouts. That'll leave him with 2 remaining. We'll be back after this. Now a handoff here to his running back. And they'll get him down right about the 20. Now a second timeout called for by the defense. That'll leave him with just 1 remaining in this 4th quarter of play. Going to give this time to the tailback. And he'll at least get him inside the red zone here, down to about the 19. Now the defense will burn their 3rd and final timeout. And as the 2 teams talk it over on their respective sidelines, we take a break. The defense, they got a little bit of a breather. Now they're back and set as we resume play. And Bullock will put this one through. And with a little over a minute to play, they have taken the lead. Now then, it's a big kick right there to give them the lead in the 4th. But, Charles, there is still time left for a final drive.
Brandon, you know they would have liked to take the clock down just a little bit further, at least under a minute or so, but this was not over yet, especially since they just need a field goal.
This fielded at the 2. Breaks the tackle now with Alley. He's at the 50, 30, 20, 10, and he's going to take it all the way into the end zone. What a return, and they've taken the lead.
Wow, I know it's a never-say-never situation, but to me, that looks like that's the one that's going to finish them off.
The score that puts them in front here late, but not. You got to rally your kick team, don't you, and say the last thing we need is a big return.
And what happens is guys get overeager, get out of their lane because they're so excited they want to make the last tackle. You mess up, could come back at you a long way.
So let's try this again. After the kick return, TD, here's yet another kickoff. This will be taken about the 12. And they're going to start this drive in pretty good shape as they get it up past the 30. Cincinnati now ready to take the field. They're down here in a 1-score game, but the time, it's a factor, but it's not a huge factor right now, is it?
It's really not, because this amount of time gives them a chance to run their offense, to go through play sequences. And this is what they work on every week in practice, usually on a Friday. They go over this type of a situation, late game situation. What are we going to do when we have the opportunity? They've called these plays a bunch of times. Now's their chance to execute them.
Well, they have the opportunity now. Here's the execution. Back to throw. He finds Ross right side. It's complete.
Holding offense.
They were looking to throw, holding on the big right tackle.
That's real simple, partner. Keep your hands inside in the chest area. You're probably okay. You get it out on the shoulders, get them wide. Usually going to pick up a holding call.
They'll look to throw. And this one's incomplete. And some secondary help here for the defense in the nickel on 3rd and long. He's back to throw. And that's incomplete. What a great sequence by this defense so far. They've given him nowhere to go with the football.
And they just have to make it stand up one more time because it appears that they've got their number. Can they not have a slip up here and allow the touchdown?
And down by 5. They've got to go for it here on 4th down. As expected, they're going for it to keep the drive alive. And that is incomplete. They had to go for it with such little time remaining. And that's going to be just about all she wrote for this one. So now it may look bleak, but this one not over. They do have all 3 timeouts.
Even at this point on the field, where it looks like, you're really backed up, hold them to a field goal. That's the mantra right now. You hold them to a field goal. You still got a chance to take care of business on the other end. But you're right. The 3 timeouts are going to be key. How well they use them to preserve clock as well as stopping them, that's the key to giving them a chance to win.
And he'll give it here to his running back. And he'll at least get him inside the red zone here, down to about the 19. Now the defense going to use the first of their timeouts. That'll leave them with 2 remaining. We'll be back after this. See if they stay on the ground for second down. Now a handoff here to his running back. And he'll get it here to the 10-yard line. Now a second timeout called for by the defense. That'll leave him with just 1 remaining in this 4th quarter of play. And the knee is taken for the Steelers out of the victory formation. Now the defense will burn their 3rd and final timeout. And as the 2 teams talk it over on their respective sidelines, we take a break. Down to a knee one more time, and that should just about do it. And Charles, I think when the schedule comes out, all teams, no matter where they're predicted to finish, talk about protecting your home turf. They were able to do that here in this one.
Similar to a tennis match, right? Not letting them break your serve. That way you hold on to it. They got it done, and they feel very good about that victory.
So for the Steelers, the win gets them a step closer to 500 at 5-6. And they'll hit the road next week to take on the Arizona Cardinals. Meanwhile, for Cincinnati, we'll see how this affects their playoff standing as they fall to 7-4 now on the year. And they'll try to make amends next week as they host the Cleveland Browns. That'll do it for us. For Charles Davis and all our hardworking crew, I'm Brandon Gaudin. You've been watching the NFL on EA Sports. For more, find us on Twitter at EA Madden NFL. The Steelers are winners as we say so long from Heinz Field.